There's a version of you that learned a language as a child and spoke it perfectly, without an accent, without struggle, without even trying. That version of you existed, and then your brain quietly locked the door. Welcome to the mystery of science. If you're new here, hit subscribe and drop a like. This one's going to change how you see your own mind. Your brain is not the same machine it was when you were 6. It looks the same from the outside, but inside something fundamental has shifted, and once it shifts, it almost never shifts back. Scientists call these critical periods, and they are some of the most fascinating and sobering discoveries in all of neuroscience. Because the window doesn't close slowly, it slams shut, and most people have no idea it's happening until it's already gone. Here's where it gets strange. You were born with more brain connections than you will ever have again. A newborn brain is absurdly overconnected, billions of synapses firing in every direction, like a city with roads going everywhere, even places no one ever needs to go. Then, starting in early childhood, the brain begins one of its most aggressive operations. It starts deleting. This process is called synaptic pruning. The connections you use get stronger. The ones you don't use get cut away, permanently. By the time you're an adult, your brain is a leaner, faster, more efficient machine. But that efficiency comes at a cost: flexibility. And this is exactly why those critical windows exist. The brain during childhood isn't just learning, it's deciding what kind of brain it's going to be for the rest of your life. So let me ask you something, and I want you to drop your answer in the comments right now, because I'm genuinely curious. What's a skill you wish someone had made you learn when you were young? Think about it. Keep that thought in your head. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that skill would have been so much easier back then, and what's actually happening in your brain that makes it harder now. Let's start with language, because this is where the science gets almost cruel. When you are born, you can hear every sound in every language on Earth, every phoneme, every consonant, every tonal distinction. Your brain arrives in the world as a universal linguistic machine, ready to wire itself to any language it encounters. Researchers at the University of Washington tested this. They played sounds from languages completely foreign to infants, and those babies responded to every difference, no matter how subtle. Then they tested adults from those same cultures, adults who had heard a completely different language their entire lives. They couldn't hear the distinctions at all. Not because their ears had gotten worse, because their brain had made a decision. Around the first year of life, your brain starts specializing. It hones in on the sounds of whatever language surrounds it and begins discarding the rest. Those neural pathways for foreign phonemes, pruned, gone. And because of this, children who grow up bilingual don't just learn 2 languages. Their brains are physically different from monolingual brains. They have denser gray matter in language regions. They process sounds differently. The architecture is not the same. This is why a child raised in a bilingual household can switch between languages without an accent in either one. And this is why an adult spending years studying Spanish, French, or Mandarin will almost always carry some trace of their native tongue, no matter how hard they try. The phonological map is already drawn. Now here's a detail most people don't know. The window for language doesn't close all at once. Grammar closes earlier than vocabulary. Accent closes earlier than grammar. There's a rough hierarchy, and researchers have traced it. Studies of people who immigrated at different ages found that those who arrived before age 7 achieved native-like grammar almost universally. Those who arrived after 13, almost none. It's not linear, it's a cliff. But language is just the beginning, and what comes next is even more extraordinary. Absolute pitch. You've probably met someone who could name a musical note just by hearing it. No reference, no instrument in hand, just the sound and instant recognition. Do, re, mi. They know it the way you know the color red. It just is what it is. For most people, this ability seems like a genetic superpower, but the science tells a different story. Studies consistently show that absolute pitch is far more common in people who began musical training before age 6 or 7. The younger the training starts, the higher the prevalence. And this isn't a small effect, it's dramatic. In some studies, nearly 40% of musicians who started before age 4 had absolute pitch. Among those who started after age 9, the number dropped close to 0. The brain, during those early years, is still calibrating how to categorize sound. Give it enough structured musical input at the right time, and it will file musical notes the same way it files colors, as fixed, stable categories with permanent labels. Wait too long, and that filing system closes. What's particularly interesting is that absolute pitch is significantly more common in East Asian populations, and researchers initially suspected it was genetic. But when they controlled for early music training, the gap narrowed substantially. The difference wasn't in the DNA, it was in the timing of education. And this raises a question that should make you a little uncomfortable. How many abilities that we call talent are actually just early exposure during the right window? Stay with me, because this next part is going to challenge what you think you know about athletic greatness. Extreme motor coordination. Watch a world-class gymnast, watch a ballet dancer, watch a figure skater perform at the highest level. These athletes move in ways that seem to defy what a human body should be able to do. And almost without exception, they all started training between the ages of 3 and 8. This is not coincidence. This is neuroscience. During early childhood, the cerebellum, the part of the brain that handles movement, timing, and coordination, is in a period of explosive development. Myelin, the fatty sheet that wraps around nerve fibers and dramatically speeds up signal transmission, is being laid down across motor circuits at a rate that will never happen again. The movement patterns you build during this window get encoded deeply. They become automatic in a way that adult-acquired skills never quite do. A gymnast who began at age 5 doesn't think about where their body is in space during a release move. They feel it. That feeling was built over years of repetition, during a period when the brain was literally constructing its motor operating system. Adults can absolutely learn gymnastics or dance or martial arts, but there's a ceiling, and that ceiling is lower than the one accessible to a child. The motor maps are less malleable. The myelin is already laid. Researchers who have studied Olympic-level athletes found that the sport's technical demands predict how young the athletes started. The more technically complex the discipline, the earlier the entry point. Speed sports, less early. Gymnastics, very early, nearly universal. Now here's where the science goes somewhere few people expect. Even seeing, the most basic thing your brain does, is something it has to learn, and it has to learn it on time. There are documented cases of children born with congenital cataracts that went uncorrected for several years. When surgeons finally removed them, the eye could capture light. The optics worked, but the brain couldn't make sense of what it was seeing. Depth, edge detection, object recognition, motion. These aren't things the eye delivers fully formed. They're things the visual cortex has to build through years of receiving and processing visual input during a specific developmental window. If that input doesn't arrive during the right period, those circuits don't develop properly, and in severe cases, they never do. Researchers call this amblyopia, lazy eye, when it involves one eye being suppressed. But the underlying mechanism reveals something profound. Vision isn't a hardware problem, it's a software problem, and the software gets written early. Nobel Prize winners David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel demonstrated this in a landmark series of experiments. They found that depriving a kitten of visual input in one eye during a critical window permanently altered the architecture of its visual cortex, even though the eye itself was intact. The brain had simply stopped allocating resources to that input. The window had closed. This work earned them the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1981 and fundamentally changed how we understand brain development. So, language, music, movement, vision. 4 abilities, 4 windows. And in each case, the science is saying the same thing. The brain's early years are not just important. They are, in some ways, irreplaceable. But here's where I want to push back on a narrative that sometimes gets attached to all of this, because it would be easy to walk away from this video feeling like it's too late, like the windows are closed and that's that. That's not what the science says. The adult brain loses plasticity in specific domains, but it gains something children categorically don't have, the ability to learn strategically. A 6-year-old learning a language isn't using explicit grammar rules. They're absorbing pattern after pattern through immersion. An adult can do something a child can't. They can understand the structure of what they are learning. They can use analogy, metacognition, strategy. Research on adult language learners shows that with sufficient intensity, full immersion, high stakes, daily meaningful use, adults can reach high levels of proficiency in ways that are genuinely impressive, even if the accent and the neural efficiency never quite match a native speaker. The same applies to music. Adults who commit seriously to learning an instrument do restructure their auditory cortex. It just takes more time, more deliberate practice, and more repetition to achieve what a child's brain does almost automatically. The plasticity is reduced, not eliminated. And in the realm of cognitive skills, things like mathematics, philosophy, systems thinking, writing, the adult brain is actually better. The prefrontal cortex, which handles abstract reasoning, strategic planning, and conceptual integration, isn't fully developed until the mid-20s. Children are phenomenal at absorbing perceptual and motor skills. Adults are phenomenal at understanding them. This is the trade-off the brain makes. Less sponge, more architect. So here's the synthesis, because this is what I want you to actually take away from this. The brain runs on timing. There are skills where timing is almost everything, where the biological infrastructure gets built during a specific window, and what gets built during that window shapes what's possible for decades afterward. Language phonology, absolute pitch, elite-level motor coordination, visual processing architecture. These are not myths. The evidence is overwhelming, and the mechanisms are increasingly well understood. And there are skills where timing matters less, where the adult brain's capacity for strategic, structured learning makes it a genuinely powerful learner, even if it's slower and less automatic than a child's. The most important thing isn't which category a skill falls into. The most important thing is knowing that your brain, whatever age it is right now, is not done. The windows for some things have closed. But the windows for meaning, for understanding, for connecting ideas in ways that a 6-year-old never could, those are wide open. If you're young, use it. Not because someone told you to, but because the neuroscience is unambiguous. This is the most flexible your brain will ever be. Learn languages, learn music, move your body in complex ways. The investment compounds in ways you can't yet see. If you're not so young, don't mourn the windows. You have something the younger brain doesn't. You can understand what you're learning. You can see the whole map, and that is its own kind of extraordinary. So, back to that question I asked you at the beginning of this video. What's the skill you wish you'd started earlier? Drop it in the comments. I read them, and I want to know. The mystery of science. See you next time.